Hello friends. Radiology is a very beautiful subject comprising of numerous fascinating named imaging signs and appearances. We are all very much fond of these particular imaging signs. What I'm going to try and do here with these sessions is that I'm going to add a little bit, or let me say a lots and lots of fun into studying these various classical imaging signs and appearances in radiology. What I intend to do here is for you to not only learn these particular imaging signs, but as we study these signs, we are going to deal with a lot of secrets related to these particular signs. Eventually, as we go ahead with this particular process, I want you to fall in love with this particular subject and most importantly, have a lot of fun as we go ahead with this particular topic of radiology. Now, there is a term which has been incorporated into the radiology jargon of terms, and that particular term is called as Aunt Mini. In fact, if you go and look online, there's a website by the name of auntmini.com which is exclusively directed towards radiology residents, students who intend to learn radiology. Right now, this Aunt Mini term has therefore been incorporated into the radiology literature to mean or indicate an imaging finding that is perfectly obvious and is pathognomonic for a particular disease. Let me give you an example. So when you see, say, a bird beak appearance at the lower end of the esophagus, it is said that this bird beak appearance is in fact an Aunt Mini for achalasia cardia. That is how it has been used because it is an obvious finding. So when we deal with imaging signs in these short sessions, we are going to deal with a lot of such Aunt Minis which are pathognomonic for a particular disease, and especially for your exam and your clinical practice ahead, you must be able to recognize them. Conventionally, this is the limit to which radiology teaching has been restricted to. But I am here to break these boundaries, and how I am going to do that is that once we are done looking at these signs, classical appearances, we are going to take a few steps ahead. And what we are going to do next is we are going to look at various secrets related to these particular beautiful signs in radiology. And when we deal with these particular secrets, right, you will learn many aspects or many facets of that particular topic or condition, which is going to help you in your clinical practice as well as your exams equally. So just to give you an example, we are going to discuss various high-yield MCQs related to that particular sign or that particular topic. We're going to discuss various other named appearances or frequently asked questions. We are going to deal with some core concepts that will help you choose investigations or answer a few questions based on or related to that particular topic. We're going to discuss various important clinical pearls related to that particular topic. So what we're going to do in these short sessions is that we will see an imaging sign, discuss the appearance and the condition in which it is seen, and then we take one step ahead and learn these beautiful secrets related to that particular sign or that particular condition. And this is how it is going to get a very, very high yield session for your preparation. Right? So just sit back, relax, and enjoy these particular sessions. These sessions are intended to refresh you as you go ahead in your preparation. So look at this particular now patient. This patient had a history of recurrent urinary tract infections. He presented with dull, long-standing chronic pain in the left lumbar region, with the suspicion of something related to the kidneys or the urinary tract. A screening X-ray kidney ureter bladder was obtained, and what do you see here? This is a very striking appearance, right? I'm sure all of you are able to pick it up. What is this? On the left side in this particular image, if you see here, that is on the left side in the region of the renal fossa, you see a large radiodense structure. How is the shape of this particular structure? If you see, it is almost as if it is forming a cast, and this cast is filling up what? It is filling up the entire left pelvic alveolar system. So something is forming a cast and is filling up the entire left pelvic alveolar system. This looks like the horns of a stag, as you can see here in this representative image, right? So what is this called as? Yes, you are right. This is given the name of a sign or appearance. This is what is called as the staghorn appearance or choral sign or staghorn sign seen in staghorn renal calculi. Right. So this is the classical spotter that I want you to recognize. This is the sign, this is the appearance. Now, let us take a few steps ahead and let us look at a few secrets related to this particular condition. So this is what is a staghorn sign appearance or a choral sign or appearance. I am going to discuss now what is the composition of this particular calculus. This calculus predominantly, remember, is also known as, because of its composition, it is what is known as the Struwite calculus. Struwite calculus. What is this Struwite? This is basically magnesium ammonium phosphate. So what is this calculus made up of? It is made up of Struwite or magnesium ammonium phosphate. How much? Is it made up of 100% of magnesium ammonium phosphate? No, if it was so, we would not have been able to see it on a radiograph. Because we are able to see it as a radiodense structure, there has to be some calcium within it, isn't it? And therefore, remember, usually this calculus is composed of around 70% of magnesium ammonium phosphate, and the remaining is nothing but your calcium phosphate. And it is this calcium content, little bit of calcium content, around 20 to 30% in this composition, is what is going to give rise to the radio dense appearance in this particular radiograph. So this is what is the regarding the composition of these staghorn calculi. These are Struwite or magnesium ammonium phosphate calculi. Another secret is there a clinical predisposition to the formation of these staghorn calculi? Yes, and that lies in the history. Do you remember I told you the history? Patient had what? The patient in this particular situation had recurrent urinary tract infection, isn't it? But there is another secret I want you to know. And this recurrent urinary tract infection, what is the causative microbe? The causative microbes which are responsible for the formation of staghorn calculi or Struwite calculi are urease enzyme producing microbes or urease enzyme producing bacteria. So what are these? These are Proteus, most commonly Proteus, Pseudomonas, Enterobacter, and Klebsiella. Yes, so this is another secret related to staghorn calculi. What is the predisposition? Recurrent UTI from urease producing bacteria, Proteus, most commonly out of these that we have listed. What is the commonest one? Commonest one is Proteus, followed by Pseudomonas, Enterobacter, and Klebsiella. So this is the clinical predisposition. Now, various types of renal calculi, kidney renal calculi are known, and believe me, each of these calculus has its own secret in terms that it is associated with certain MCQs, certain factual pearls that I want you to know, right? So what is the secret related to calcium oxalate calculus? Yes, this, remember, is the overall most common renal calculus. Look at the name, calcium and oxalate. So it is seen in conditions which is hypercalciuria, or it may also be seen in hyperoxaluria. Right? So this is what is the secret associated with calcium oxalate. Struwite or triple phosphate. Why is it called triple phosphate? Can you tell me? Because I said it comprises of magnesium, ammonium phosphate, that is almost 70% of the composition, and remaining 30% is calcium phosphate or oxalate, right? So therefore, or rather calcium phosphate, the remaining 30%, and therefore because it is magnesium ammonium phosphate and calcium phosphate, this is what is called as triple phosphate calculi, Struwite calculi, right? Now uric acid calculus has a secret associated with it, and what is that? Uric acid calculi, rather pure uric acid calculi, they are radiolucent. They are radiolucent. Pure uric acid calculi are radiolucent, meaning when you try to find these calculi on a radiograph, you will not be able to see them, right? Cystine calculi have a secret associated with it, and what is that? Cystine calculi, remember, are the hardest of all the calculi, and these calculi, therefore, because they are so hard, they cannot be treated with extracorporeal shock wave lithotripsy. So ESWL does not work with cystine calculi. Xanthine calculi are again seen in a predisposition, and that is nothing but hyperxanthinuria. Yes, so what is the most common calculus overall, renal calculus overall? It is calcium oxalate. Remember, radiolucent is pure uric acid calculi. Hardest is cystine calculi. Hyperxanthinuria, obviously, xanthine calculi are seen. Few more secrets now. Can you tell me what is the investigation of choice for renal or ureteric calculi? Let us look at the various investigations that could be done. Now, initially, when a patient presents with renal colic, right, we want to look at the calculus, try and find it on a simple investigation. We try and do a X-ray, right, or an X-ray KOB, a simple radiograph. That is the image that we saw at the start. Very commonly, when the patient presents with acute renal colic, we want to look at the kidneys to see if there is hydronephrosis. So USG is also done. In fact, remember, USG is considered to be the investigation of choice for a diagnosis of hydronephrosis or hydroureter. Why? Look at hydro. Hydro means water, right? Fluid. Fluid is the friend of ultrasound. Anywhere in the body you want to detect fluid, what will you do? You'll do ultrasound. So ultrasound is the investigation of choice for detection of hydronephrosis and hydroureter. But I'm asking you here, what is the investigation of choice for renal or ureteric calculi? Is it ultrasound? No. Is it X-ray KUB? No. It is in fact non-contrast CT. Non-contrast CT, remember, is the investigation of choice for renal or ureteric calculi. That is because kidney, ureter are retroperitoneal structures. Sometimes the bowel gases can obscure the visualization of these small calculi, and therefore on a CT scan, these small calculi can very easily be picked up. And therefore, remember, the investigation of choice is non-contrast CT. Yes, now another secret I want you to know. Questions have been asked saying which calculi are not seen on an X-ray KUB, and we discussed this. Which is the radiolucent calculus? Can you tell me? So a pure, yes, I just told you, a pure uric acid calculus is radiolucent. It will not be seen on an X-ray QB. What if I do a CT scan? On a CT scan, uric acid calculi may be picked up even if they have, say, 1 to 2% of calcium content, because of the higher sensitivity of doing a CT scan to detect minimal calcium within it. Right, uric acid calculi may be seen on CT scans as a mildly hyperdense structure, but there are certain calculi which are not picked up on CT as well, right? And what are these calculi? These calculi, which are occult calculi, even on CT scan, are two calculi. One made up of pure matrix calculus, so pure matrix calculi, or indinavir calculi. So what is indinavir? Indinavir is an antiretroviral drug which is known to cause, renal calculi. These indinavir calculi are radiolucent to such an extent that they cannot be picked up even on a CT scan. So calculus which are not seen or radiolucent on an X-ray is usually pure uric acid calculi. They may sometimes be picked up on CT scan, but calculi which are never seen on a CT are two calculi: pure matrix calculi and indinavir calculi. Yes. Now, certain named signs related to urolithiasis. One such sign is what is called as the Steenstrasse appearance. What is this Steenstrasse? Those of you who would have studied German, right, in your 11th, 12th standard would probably know the meaning. What is Steenstrasse? In German means a street formed of stones. A street formed of stones. So what is this? In what context is it is used? It is used in the clinical context of post-lithotripsy or post-ESWL. What is lithotripsy? Lithotripsy is going to break down the larger calculus into multiple smaller fragments. So what is going to happen? See, look at this patient. On the right side, there is a percutaneous nephrostomy tube which has been kept into the kidney because there is a large calculus within the kidney. there on the left side, right, lithotripsy was done and a large calculus was broken down into smaller fragments, and in such cases always a stent is kept, and that is what is called as a DJ stent. DJ stent is a double J stent because at both its proximal end and its distal end you see a J-shaped curvature. Now what happens? Why is this DJ stent kept? Because we know that there is a large calculus and it has been fragmented into the smaller and smaller portions. So what happens? These smaller portions are going to line up, see here, are going to line up along the longitudinal length of this particular DJ stent, and when they line up along the longitudinal length of the DJ stent, this is what is called as the Steenstrasse appearance or street of stones appearance. Another very important sign is what is called as the soft tissue rim sign. It is used for a specific purpose. And soft tissue rim sign, what is that? It is used to distinguish between an impacted ureteric calculus versus a phlebolith. What is a phlebolith? Phlebolith is nothing but a calcification along a vascular wall, mainly the pelvic veins. So along the pelvic veins, the walls of the pelvic veins, sometimes there could be calcifications. This can sometimes be misinterpreted as a ureteric calculus. What sign helps to distinguish between them? It is called soft tissue rim sign. What is that? Look at this image here on this non-contrast CT. You can see a calculus here. But look around the calculus, you can see that there is a thick soft tissue rim which is there. What is this rim? This rim is nothing but the ureteric wall. Because the calculus has been impacted there, the adjacent ureteric wall becomes edematous and this appears as a soft tissue rim. So this soft tissue rim is suggestive of a diagnosis of an impacted ureteric calculus. What happens in a phlebolith? Around a phlebolith, there is not a uniform rim which is seen around it. It is not seen. What is seen in fact is that there is a phlebolith or a calcification like this, and a uniform rim around it is not seen, but an eccentric soft tissue of the vein is seen going on one side. This is given a name. This is what is called as the comet tail appearance of a phlebolith. So soft tissue rim sign is suggestive of an impacted ureteric calculus. Comet tail appearance is suggestive of a phlebolith. Friends, for those of you who are preparing for this particular NEET 2021, I would admit that it has already been a very long duration of preparation. The intention of putting up these short sessions throughout your preparation duration starting this particular point is that when you are particularly dealing with a difficult subject or a topic throughout the entire day, as you get tired towards the end of the day, I want you to take a break. I want you to sit back, relax, probably while you're having some tea or breakfast, or probably you're just relaxing. I want you to look at these short sessions. As you look at these sessions, we not only learn about these signs, but also about certain, secrets related to those particular signs. And in doing so, you will feel relaxed, you will feel refreshed. At the same time, you're learning something new, right? You're learning some new concepts or clinical pearls. It will help you get refreshed a little bit. I want you to get your neurotransmitters replenished and then go back and attack that particular complex topic or subject that you have been struggling with and finish it off right away. Right? In these short sessions, what I intend to do, as I said at the start, at the outset, is that I want you to learn radiology. I want you to have fun while doing it. And most importantly, I want you to fall in love with this beautiful, fascinating subject of radiology.